Hi there. I'm going to talk a little bit about my health initiative. I did my placement at Elite Sports Medicine and Conditioning at 104 Byron Street in Whitby. So the focus of this initiative is desk posture. So more specifically, attempting to problemize a lot of the poor posture that we see when people sit down for extended periods of time. Um, so the clinic itself shares a space with Twist Performance, which caters to elite level athletes. So it sort of acts as like a sort of a one-stop shop for athletes to train and then be treated as they offer services in massage therapy, physiotherapy, and athletic therapy. So really sort of an all-encompassing, comprehensive kind of service. They also cater to general populations people as well, but I think the ideal sort of clientele is athletes for them, just due to sort of the space that they share and the qualifications and sort of wants of the business side of things. So what we'll do here is we'll kind of go through this piece by piece. We'll look at sort of an introduction to what the plan is, sort of what like the plan itself, and then just kind of like the execution of it. So first things first, I think it's important to have an understanding of kind of what's going on in the body when we're sitting down, just as kind of a means of building a foundation for this initiative. So when we sit down, a lot of the time, just due to sort of a lack of being conscious of what our body is doing, as we're often distracted by, say, like a computer or reading something or whatever it is. But we end up sort of rounding over at the kyphotic spine. Certain muscles are being shut off, certain muscles are being elongated, and then over prolonged periods of time, this results in shortened muscles and weakened muscle groups. So oftentimes, by the law of reciprocal innervation, which just means that sort of what's going on in the front will kind of affect what's going on in the back. So for example, if you have very tight hip flexors in the front, then oftentimes what will happen is you will have hyperlordosis, which is an excessive curvature of the lumbar spine. And this is also accompanied by a anterior pelvic tilt. So the lumbar spine does this, and the pelvis does this. So you end up with a big, big curve in the lower back. This also affects your core, so rectus abdominis. And there's a lot of other things going on with the lower extremities as well as the upper extremities, right? So if the kyphotic spine is rounded over, pec minor shortens, you kind of end up with sort of a weakened musculature in the upper back. A lot of things can kind of go wrong. So studies have actually linked prolonged periods of sitting and the postural deficiencies that accompany that to increase mortality rates. And then just in terms of like other sedentary behaviors, these have obviously been linked to things like cardiovascular diseases, different kinds of metabolic problems, all kinds of nasty stuff. For the sake of this, because it's within a facility that kind of deals with health and fitness, the idea was to kind of just raise consciousness, because in discussing this with my manager at placement, Matt, the biggest thing that we kind of landed on was awareness, consciousness. So having just little reminders throughout the day to kind of cue you to do things like pull your shoulders back, chest tall, engage your core, engage your glutes, all these things, whether you be standing up or sitting down, these are really important things. So the idea here is just to have little notices around the office at each workstation, especially reception, that just say little reminders every hour, every 2 hours, get up, do certain stretches, do certain exercises, and always be conscious of your posture. So I feel that the rationale for this initiative is having a cue right in front of you that says, sit up straight, pull your shoulders back, and then get up every hour, every 2 hours, and do these exercises, is really a good way to raise awareness of exactly what your body is doing, sort of where your deficiencies lie, and then just a means of kind of improving your posture overall. So with reception especially, because this is a position that involves a lot of sitting, the focus here is getting them to get up and stretch their hips, like I said, at a period of every hour, every 2 hours, and then working on things like improving like the rounded over posture. So you can see I have a little sample of a newsletter here. I'll include a picture of this Bristol board as well, because you can't see it very well in the video. This is just a sample newsletter. You may or may not be able to see, but they've got some exercises on there, some stretches, and it's just a small reminder that just says, you know, are you punching over? Stop, sit with your chest nice and tall, pull your shoulders back. Has it been 2 hours? Has it been 1 hour? Get up and do these stretches, do these exercises. Small reminders. Um, like I said, like this is an athletic facility, so a lot of the positions there are trainers. Obviously, this involves being up and moving around and not necessarily participating in sedentary behaviors similar to those that you would see in a reception position. But having said that, one thing that I sort of discussed with my manager and collaborating on this was, yeah, you can be standing up, you can be active, all these things, but if you're standing up and you know your posture isn't necessarily where it's supposed to be, it's not any good. So having these around, even for people who are working like active positions, just the reminder to stand up tall and pull your shoulders back, all these things, is really, really beneficial for developing good postural habits. And then you're not, it sort of eliminates, not necessarily eliminates, but it minimizes the risks associated with having poor posture. Sorry about that. These are things that take time. A lot of the patients that came in, it was constantly sort of an uphill battle of driving in that mindset of being aware of your posture, being aware of what your body is doing. So the point of having these notices throughout the office is just to raise awareness. The two keys to success here, I feel, are frequency and accountability. So one, being accountable for your posture, taking charge of what your body is doing and the health of your body. Obviously, a lot of the people that are employed at this place are trainers. So fitness and health is the biggest part of what they do. So it really does boil down to a matter of practicing what you preach. And then the other thing being frequency. So being, like I said, accountable for doing this frequently throughout the day. So if you are sitting for an extended period of time, or if you're standing with poor posture for an extended period of time, then you need to be aware of, you know, the ratio of the time it takes to sort of reverse that damage versus the time that it takes to undo it. So to explain that, if you're sitting for an extended period of time, then you're going to need to spend longer stretching your hips out. So discussing sort of the specifics of this, a good sort of rule of thumb that I developed with my manager, who is the head athletic therapist at Elite Sports Medicine, was 2 minutes, 2 minutes per side. So if you've been sitting for 2 hours, stretch each hip flexor for 2 minutes. So essentially, there's a level of delegation here that has to occur between the employer and the employees, where there is allotted time for them to stand up from their workstations, do these exercises, do these stretches, and it's really an investment in your employees, in their health. So while I was at Elite Sports Medicine, I was able to witness a meeting between them and Twist that was in the interest of establishing cohesion between the two agencies. So what that means is, obviously there's a specific way that they do things at Elite Sports Medicine Conditioning, and they happen to share a space in the weight room here that I have a photograph of with the staff and the clients at Twist. So if there's a client that comes in and there's some level of exercise prescription occurring, what will happen is they will take them out into the weight room. Sometimes there's classes going on in there, sometimes there's trainers with clients in there, and they'll take them through the exercise prescription, show them how to do things. So the purpose of this meeting was kind of to establish a open line of communication between the two agencies, where it's like, this is why we're doing things this way, this is why we're queuing things this way, maybe this is how you guys should be doing things. Let's have an open line of communication where we can collaborate on how these things are done, just in the interest of offering the best services that we can, which is something that I feel would be pivotal to the success of this health initiative. So having a meeting between the two agencies, where the employers sort of delegate with the employees and say, we're going to allow you to take this time to invest in your health, to be conscious of your posture. We're going to have these notices around the gym that just urge you to be kind of more conscious of what your body is doing. And then another thing that I feel would be really beneficial to the success of this is almost like a buddy system. So, it may or may not be a little irritating, but just having like reminders from other employees to do like posture checks. So maybe, like once a week, once every 2 weeks, they have one of these meetings where they just say, okay, pick a partner, look at each other's posture. How can you improve this? What exercises can you do? All of these people are very well educated in terms of corrective exercises. So really, not super necessary to have examples here in the newsletter or flyer or post it, whatever you want to call it. But just, in the interest of having a thorough demonstration here, there are some included. So the model that I established with my manager was sort of a stretching and strengthening, right? So the muscles that are shortened need to be stretched, and then the muscles that are inhibited need to be strengthened. So if you have that excessive kyphotic curve, like a big rounded upper back and internally rotated shoulders, what you would want to do is stretch out across the front and then strengthen across the back to have the shoulders nice and pulled back. And this is a model that I think a lot of people would benefit from, not just in Twist and elite sports medicine, but just at a general level. I think this is something that is very transferable to other workplaces where there is extended periods of sitting at desks. Because as I said, there have been quite a few studies over the last little while that have linked sitting to a lot of postural deficiencies, mortality rates, all of these things. It's kind of being hailed as sort of the silent killer. So sort of just going over this in a little bit of a recap, we've kind of looked at how sitting affects the body. We've looked at how this plan can kind of be implemented, just simply just putting Post-its around the facility, and then sort of having these meetings between the employers and the employees, and then kind of like pairing up the employees and having them look at each other's posture. Just simple activities. Another thing I think that is kind of going to benefit the success of this is keeping it very, very simple. So what I noticed in my time at Elite Sports Medicine was that they will get into very technical terms at times, and then they will also kind of lay things out in sort of layman's terms at times. If you're addressing a strength coach who might not necessarily have the same level of understanding with regards to physiotherapy or athletic therapy as say Matt or the physio at Elite Sports Medicine Conditioning, chances are you might lose them. So keeping things nice and simple, just saying, using analogies like think about your humeral head as a golf ball that sits on a tee. If you are internally rotated, your golf ball is going to fall off of the tee. So what we want to do is pull that golf ball back onto the tee. So constant cueing to have the shoulders nice and pulled back. And like I said, the success of that, I think, can be largely attributed to having reminders around the office that are just small urges to just say, like, pull your shoulders back, be conscious of what your body is doing. And really, I think that's the biggest key to success here is just the constant cueing throughout the office, having the newsletters posted, all these things. So really, the kind of the meat and potatoes of this is having these newsletters posted around the office at each workstation. So where sitting occurs, where the trainers will be during the sessions, all these things that just say, what's your body doing? Are your shoulders rounded over? Are you collapsed over? Are you hunching? All these things. Pull your shoulders back. Take a second to do these stretches. If you're just standing there, you can lunge and stretch your hips. If you're sitting at a desk, you can get up for a few minutes when you're able to, and whether it be they have resistance bands all through the weight room, so maybe grab a resistance band from the weight room, do some band pull-aparts to strengthen up your upper back and pull things back to where they're supposed to be, get down on the floor and stretch your hips out a little bit. All of these things are kind of good examples of exercises and stretches that would be quintessential to the success of sort of evening out a lot of the postural deficiencies that are associated with sitting for long periods of time. The real interest here is the health of the employees. It is an investment in their health. Obviously, agencies can kind of like overlook that and just say, you sit at your desk all day, you do your work, worry about this kind of thing when you go home. It's not their problem. Which is sort of being recognized as almost high-risk work environments, which is something that we really want to avoid. As I said, it kind of boils down to a matter of practicing what you preach. So if you work in a facility that is largely invested in the health of your clients and your patients, both Twist and Elite Sports Medicine and Conditioning, when your day is really, really busy and you have lots of patients and clients coming through the door, it's easy to kind of like lose track of what your body is doing or just say I'll do it later. But I do feel that having these reminders throughout the office and throughout the training facility will be a good way of kind of like raising awareness and keeping people both accountable and conscious of what their body is doing, and hopefully improve their posture and subsequently improve their health. When you have bad posture, you are at an increased risk for injury. For example, we had quite a few patients come in who had bulging discs or herniated discs, whatever. When you were in that posture of hyperlordosis, where your lower back has an excessive curvature to it, and then you do something that kind of loads that musculature, and it curves the other way, it curves posteriorly, you are at increased risk for a bulging disc. And this is just one of many things that you are at an increased risk of. So, patients that came in had this happen with minimal load. One woman bent over to tie her shoes and herniated a disc. And kind of going through like what her MOI was, what her habits were, and gathering some history on sort of her lifestyle leading up to this injury. She was someone who spent a great deal of time sitting down. She was someone who had anterior pelvic tilt, hyperlordosis, very tight hip flexors, all these things. So she was walking around essentially in a state where it wasn't a matter of, are you going to get injured, but when are you going to get injured? Which is something that, again, I think you would obviously really want to avoid. So having these notices throughout the office is a great way, I feel, to raise consciousness of what the body is doing, increase accountability, and then ideally improve posture around the office and contribute to improving the health of the employees and keeping them healthy. So that's my health initiative. Like I said, I'll post an image of it as well, just so you can kind of like go through sort of the text here and get a better look at the images. Thank you.